people of all kinds, whoever you are, everyone's welcome to this dojo. It's your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freakout 10, baby. Bring you guys episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Alright, back in our movie review. And today we're back to the DreamWorks movies. And I know for sure it won't be the only one I'll be reviewing this year. And for those who haven't been keeping up with the last reviews, the last time we saw the company, they took on the huge ambitious venture, The Prince of Egypt. A film that I named the animated movie of 1998. And it showed what DreamWorks was capable of as they took on the daunting task of adapting the Book of Moses for an animated audience. And made it work, creating one of the most visually striking, most well-written stories I've ever seen for an animated film. Welp, after delivering on their promise of creating a film Disney would never make, where do we go now? Well, that's where today's film comes in. The Road to El Dorado. But does it deserve to be placed in the same field as Prince of Egypt? Well, grab your map, grab a boat, and all the gold you can as we talk about The Road to El Dorado. Now, The Road to El Dorado, this is a film made in the year 2000, and it's directed by two guys actually, Eric Bibo Bergeron, which this is his directorial debut, as before this, he worked mostly in the animation department on films for Emblem, Disney. Hell, he worked on All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, of all movies. One of, if not my all-time favorite animated films, and even did uncredited work on The Iron Giant before this. It was also directed by a guy named Don Paul, who's worked mostly in visual effects, having worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the original All Dogs Go to Heaven, and a good chunk of Disney Renaissance classics. Hell, before this, he worked on Prince of Egypt, which may explain why he was brought on to helm this film. Now, there is a third person in the directing chair that remains uncredited, that being DreamWorks CEO Jeffrey Katzenberg. And that aspect plays into the chaotic production this film had, leading up to its release. But in order to talk about the production, we need to go back to the year 1995. The year Katzenberg left Disney, as he was starting to put the finishing touches on DreamWorks as a company and put Ants and Prince of Egypt into production, where he had arranged a meeting with Ted Elliott and Terry Russo, fresh off writing the hit Aladdin, while he was at Disney. He was looking to plant the seeds for other ideas for animated films, with his main objective being with this movie to make a film that would make the secondary dysfunctional loser characters the main focus. And handed them the Hugh Thomas book, Montezuma Cortez and the Fall of Old Mexico, something he insisted them use as inspiration. The two came up with the idea of two con men getting thrust on an adventure where they discovered the lost city of El Dorado, drawing influence from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Bob Hope and Bing Crosby road movies of the 1940s, with the original intent being to target an older demographic due to the backdrop of which the film was taking place, with the original director's pick being Will Fenton and David Silverman to direct the film. Jeffrey approved of what they were going for and gave the film a budget of $95 million, and they got their cast together. Then, from there, things went to fucking hell, as Jeffrey out of nowhere thought the film would work better if it was targeted to kids. This meant that several aspects of the original script had to be rewritten to make it appeal to a younger demographic. Along with that, because the film was being pivoted towards a younger demographic, and because the pivot was being more towards being pushed to being a musical, even reuniting the Lion King duo, Hans Zimmer, who had already had a history working with DreamWorks, being that before this he had worked on Prince of Egypt, but also reunited him with Elton John and John Powell. This hardship also played into their portion of the music, as the songs kept constantly changing during production. And it wasn't just the people making the music who found themselves having problems, but also the animation team. As because the team also had worked on Prince of Egypt, which was also in production around the same time, more resources were being farmed over to that film than this film, with some of the animation having to be outsourced. Because there were all these problems going on, Jeffrey found himself at war with Will and David, which led to the two of them being fired from production and the film being put on hold. That wasn't until Don and Eric were brought in to finish the film, with Jeffrey doing some uncredited directing. Eventually, the film finished production, and to market the film, they had a small teaser for it at the beginning of the Prince of Egypt VHSs, and feeling that this was the appropriate film to have this marketing tie around it, Burger King helped market the film, which was one of the things that they were so against Prince of Egypt having. There was a video game made for the film, albeit an awful one, on the PlayStation that was basically Resident Evil for kids, the best way to say it, because it's got that camera view of Resident Evil, and on top of that, it kind of has the tank controls like that game. It was a very small promotion, though, unlike that of Prince of Egypt, which definitely had more of a market to it. And it definitely didn't help the box office, as the film was released on March 31st, 2000, and it crashed and burned big time. And you wouldn't think that, as it opened to number 2 in its opening weekend, making over $12 million. Guess Erin Brockovich was in her third week, and Julia Roberts was still having her finger wrapped around the world. But it was less than the opening of Prince of Egypt, which was over $14 million. By April, the film had made only over $25 million. I think they thought this was going to lead to something new. They were going to have like a Bob Hope and Bing Crosby sort of adventure, and that this was going to outdo Prince of Egypt. Sadly, that didn't happen. And it's definitely the first flop DreamWorks has seen. On top of that, the film's reception was more mixed than that of Ants and Prince of Egypt. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 49%. Critics praised the film for its animation, its humor, with some people praising the songs despite feeling it wasn't up to par with The Lion King. Hell, Roger Ebert even came to the film's defense, awarding it 3 stars while saying it's inferior to Ants and Prince of Egypt. He still had a great time watching the film. The criticisms that critics who did not like the film directed it towards the film's characters and the story, which they found predictable. The audience side seems to disagree, though, as on that side is a 66%, and on IMDb it is a 6.9 out of 10. So the audience seems to have a different opinion from the critics. Now, this was a film I was actually really excited to check out, being that Prince of Egypt had set a high bar for what DreamWorks could offer. So I was excited to see what they would bring with their next feature. And despite me not knowing that this was meant to be a more adult film, I didn't know that till later on. I still welcomed it as a fun comedy, as I wanted to see them explore more of that, being that they did that so well with Ants and what they were able to get away with in that film, being that the laughs that they brought into Ants, while the film was targeted towards kids, it had an adult vibe to it. So I was interested to see if they would do the same thing with this one. And at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. I know there's a lot of people who prefer this to the Prince of Egypt. I wouldn't say that, though. If anything, I do agree with Roger Ebert's review, as I do think it is a tiny step back from both those films, and I do prefer both those over this. But with that being said, it's still a fun animated film. I definitely think it would have been a lot better, though, had they stuck to the original plan, because while there were some aspects made to make the film more adult that were stripped away in this version, those aspects are still noticeable on a scale back sense. That's not really where I feel the film is affected. It's really towards the end, and that's really where you could see where the film was rushed. And I'll get deeper into those aspects later, because we have the basics to go over. But getting into the cast in this film, with the cast, you got Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline, this is an actor from A Fish Called Wanda, Fierce Creatures, and that piece of shit Wild Wild West. He was also in The Hunchback of Notre Dame before this. You have Kenneth Branagh, who was also in Wild Wild West. He was the villain. Much Ado Nothing About, Hamlet. You got Rosie Perez from White Men Can't Jump, It Could Happen to You. You have the awesome Armand Assante as the villain. You have Edward James Olmos from Blade Runner and Selena with Jennifer Lopez. You also have roles from people like Jim Cummings, who before this was Steele and Balto. He was also in All Dogs Go to Heaven 2. You even have a small role from Tobin Bell from Mississippi Burning and The Firm. But getting into the plot of the film, the plot is basically, it starts in Spain where we meet two conmen named Miguel and Tulio, played by Kenneth Branagh and Kevin Kline, who basically during a game of dice, which is their con, they rig the game and they end up winning themselves a map that leads them to the lost city of El Dorado. Through some mishaps, they wind up on a ship where they end up as prisoners for this guy named Cortez, played by Jim Cummings, but manage to escape, where they wind up on an island that happens to be the same island that leads to El Dorado, where the people who live there believe they are a part of this prophecy that they are the gods that this priest named Ezekiel Khan, played by Armand Assante, had been talking about for a really long time, of which the chief, played by Edward James Olmos, believes. So they decide to use this image to trick the residents into building them this ship so they can make off with the gold, as they also meet this woman named Shell, played by Rosie Perez, a resident of El Dorado who develops the hots for Tulio and agrees to help them play up this facade so that she can also have a chance of escaping El Dorado herself. Will Miguel and Tulio's act not be blown so they could escape rich, ready to buy a house in Spain? Or will El Dorado find out about their plan and feed them to a statue cat? Like I said, I think Road to El Dorado would have worked better for me had they stayed with the original vision. Because you could definitely tell this is a film screaming for a bigger scale. Maybe not on the biblical scale of Prince of Egypt, but definitely on the scale of a big animated adventure of those Bob Hope movies. Because there's a lot of moments where the film really feels held back in some areas in terms of scope when it comes to the story. Because it wants to use the El Dorado setting to tell its story in the same way the people behind Prince of Egypt managed to do that with the Egypt setting. But because it's restrained, the movie never really feels like it uses the setting to get that grand, massive scale across. And that may be because of the last minute changes that would have showcased more of the grand scale of El Dorado. But regardless, it never reaches the highs that I feel it wants to reach. And it especially doesn't reach the highs of Prince of Egypt. And while there are some tiny glimpses of the scope that it wants to have, the little stuff leave you wanting more. It also harms aspects of the story where more could have been expanded on, especially when it comes to the world of El Dorado and particular characters like the Chief and Ezekiel Khan and even Cortez. Ezekiel, especially with how he's built up as this huge threat and this huge evil plan, is something that he does in the middle of the film with the big cat statue, which is admittedly an awesome scene, but that could have been saved for the ending of the film, because it's that moment the film blows its load and it never reaches the height of this moment. And the Chief himself, despite showing respect to them as gods, we never see him connect with the two, where he sees the two beyond this god image that he's been taught to see them as. And that really wastes its characters, especially with the Cortez portion. Cortez himself was originally written to be a bigger villain, but his role is pushed down to Ezekiel to be the main threat. Now, I'm pretty sure there's people asking, are you sure you like this film? Are you lying to us? With that said, those aspects aside, the story as a whole, I do like. I like how the story is a take on the Bing Crosby and Bob Hope road movies. I thought it was another different route for DreamWorks to take, like how with Prince of Egypt, they did an animated take on biblical movies. How that applies here too, but with an animated take on adventure movies. I also like the two leads. I like they're not the typical straight men, but rather like if you took the con side characters and made them the lead. I thought that was something different. And I like that they made the characters likable and charming and kind of having this brotherly bond as the story goes along. And the film has this sense of humor that, like Ants, is really funny. And it does kind of reach that adult side that film has. That can be appealing to adults. And those aspects I'm surprised they got away with. Like, there's a scene where Chell and Tullio are having implied sex. You don't see it, but it's definitely implied because when you see Tullio come up, his hair's all disheveled and he's smiling. So there's definitely some moments like that are funny and will definitely rope the adults in. And despite the film feeling on a smaller scale as opposed to Prince of Egypt, once El Dorado is revealed, I do like the creativity of it. I like how the movie is about them trying to keep this act up as they have to prove their gods, especially playing this weird ball game where the ball has to go through this round hole and they switch the ball with this armadillo. That really makes it creative. So despite the restraint being noticeable around the film, I think what they were able to churn out with the story is really good. Now, on a technical side, I've heard a lot of people bring up the problem with this movie is that it looks too much like Prince of Egypt. But I don't see that as a bad thing, because Prince of Egypt was a beautiful animated film. And this is as well. I think I'm willing to get behind it being used here because it kind of feels like it does its own thing with the animation for this film. It uses the style they employed with Prince of Egypt to be a bit more bouncy and cartoony, especially in the characters and how they're designed. The faces are not as straight-faced as Prince of Egypt, like serious looking, whereas here the expressions are a tiny bit more exaggerated, especially on Chell. And I like the difference there with this film because it allows the team to experiment with this style of animation with another sort of tone and feel that I think it gets nicely into this film and fits like a glove. And I think they do a great job working with the more zany and cartoony tone that they were going for, as each moment has a lot of energy thanks to the comedic timing both directors were able to get out of not just the two actors but also in the more cartoony world that the movie sets itself in. You could tell the directors learned a lot from their time working at various animation studios and how they work with comedy and animation. The film has a great look animation wise. Each environment is animated with a rich color scheme and some great shots that really showcases the team's hard work, like the trek through the jungle, and there's that wonderful shot where they're walking along the bridge and then the background is this waterfall that reflects them in the background. Or even when they first arrive in El Dorado, there's that montage of them looking in the city and there's that shot of the huge fish under the water. And just the fact that the team took a lot from Mayan culture to bring this world to life, it really makes the environment look beautiful. And the moments involving action have a great amount of energy, excitement, and danger to them, like the scene where Ezekiel summons this demon cat to kill Tullio Miguel, and it's running through the city, destroying everything in its path to get to them. And just how the team used CGI and hand-drawn animation in the movement of this creature and the destruction it's causing. It's really an exciting and thrilling sequence. On top of that, the moments involving musical numbers are also really well animated, having a bit of this Vegas gold-like color scheme to them. That being said, there's moments where they try to mix CGI and hand-drawn animation in the same way they did with Prince of Egypt, and unlike that film where they did a better job blending it in there, it really sticks out like a sore thumb in some shots. In particular, it's the scenes like the barrels on the ship or the gold. It was almost like they didn't have enough time to modify it in some way or enhance it in a scene where it could have been a lot less noticeable. And that may have also been because the resources were also pawned off the Prince of Egypt. I think that's why it looks a lot better there. But regardless with that, it looks really, really unfinished. some of the shots. But I'm not going to let that take away the fact that this is a great looking animated film with a lot of heart and display, and the team behind it did an excellent job. With that said, I also think they get a lot out of their cast members. Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh especially. I know a year before this they worked on Wild Wild West, like I said, but I think they do a better job here than they do in that film. I like the two's dynamic. You brought these guys having this brotherly relationship. Their banter together was funny and witty, and considering the fact that they both recorded their dialogue at the same time to play off each other, I thought that added a sense of realness to their relationship. I love the scene between the two when Ezekiel finds out they're not gods, and they're both having this argument as Ezekiel watches in amusement, and it comes to them punching the shit out of him at the same time. That gave me a good laugh, and the fact that they both did their own singing, I gotta give it to them for that. Rosie Perez, I thought was perfect as Shell, playing this sort of bombshell who starts having feelings for Tulio, and you think at first she's using it to get off El Dorado as she starts helping them live up to the image of being a god in El Dorado. So at first you kind of think her motivations are selfish, but it does feel like she grows as a character when she sees what this whole thing is doing to this brotherly love between the two. And I appreciate the fact that Rosie didn't play her as the bitchy, selfish girl that she did, and it can happen to you, but the seductive, smart, charismatic character that learns what it's like to be a part of a team. And I can definitely see why there's some fans who find her hot. Me, I find Michelle Pfeiffer hotter than Prince of Egypt. You know, she's fine, too. And I thought Rosie fit into that well, working off Kevin and Kenneth and the scenes they're all together, Kevin especially. And her scenes really show her giving it her all, and really show her talent that she has as an actress. Armand Assante, I thought was awesome as Ezekiel Khan. I already loved him in Judge Dredd as Judge Dredd's brother, and I think he gives that same diabolical, over-the-top nature that he gave in that film. I love the scene when he's making the giant cat, and he talks about how it requires one more thing to be made with this guy helping him make it, and he asks, "What's that?" And he pushes him into the pit, and he goes, "A sacrifice." And just how Armand was able to deliver that, just how deliciously evil he did it in the same way he did it with his role in Judge Dredd, really made it work here. And it saddens me that he doesn't have as much to work with in the final. I felt like it would have given Armand a lot more screen presence there. But in terms of performance, he's not bad. Edward James Olmos, he's fine. He's just the clueless chief who believes everything they say, so there's not much for him to do. But as a performance, he's fine. For what he has to do. Just not much to say. Other actors I could take him in leaving. I know Jim Cummings is the dude who wants him arrested. Cortez, he's fine, even though that plot goes nowhere. As a performance, though, Jim's not bad. It's Jim Cummings. I can't say much. Tobin Bell is fine, too, for what he has to do. Again, not much to say. He's just there to point out their con artists and have them on the run. But the acting isn't bad. I just wish some actors, considering some that are supposed to have a bigger presence in the film, were given a bit more to do. That being said, though, I will say, though, the score and the music is great. It's nice to see the Lion King duo together again with Hans Zimmer, Tim Rice, and Elton John. I appreciate they did something different with the music and didn't try and copy their work on The Lion King. The songs are catchy. I like the "It's Tough to Be a God" song. I even like the opening where it's basically Elton like singing about El Dorado and how it was built. And I like that his singing is basically him narrating the film. I thought that was a cool little touch. Han's score also contributes to the world of El Dorado, the wonders of the environment, and setting the first sight of El Dorado when you first stepped in there. The film's not heavily reliant on musical numbers from characters, as only 2 or so come from Miguel and Tulio, so don't go in expecting a heavy assortment of them. But to me, those who don't find that to be their thing, I think they'll be happy about that, and they'll get a kick out of it here. So yeah, this is a really good animated film. I mean, I already touched upon some of the flaws, but there is one more I do need to talk about, and this is where I really think the film really shows how rushed it was. The ending. The final battle's not that satisfying. It's just them escaping from El Dorado. And you see, like, Cortez. Oh, this is going to be spoiler. Spoiler. Ezekiel has been kicked off El Dorado, and he goes to get Cortez, who comes there, and he decides to lead them to El Dorado. But by the time he's led them there, you see that they manage to block the way to El Dorado, and Ezekiel gets arrested. And that's really where the film ends. And it's just sort of like, that's it? That's not even a final. It's just they escaped, and it's just, there's no sense of that sense of danger that you felt during the cat fight could have been what the final could have been. I really wish they went with that instead of this. So, yeah, the final's not much. But all that aside, the road to El Dorado could have benefited itself if the team stuck with the original plan, as a lot of the elements that did have to be scaled back do make the film feel a bit disjointed and rushed. And I think following this film after Prince of Egypt was a mistake, because I think the film bombing came not just from the marketing, but because you were also following a highly regarded animated film. I mean, the next film that I plan to see over the summer by them, Chicken Run, I think they should have made that the next film after Prince of Egypt. Should have gone across the comedy side that the DreamWorks team has, and I think it would have helped the audience seem a bit more prepared for this one. With that said, I will say this. This movie did not deserve to bomb. And what is there is a fun adventure with two bumbling idiots that will leave you smiling. So while I recommend you check out The Road to El Dorado, don't go in expecting Prince of Egypt. This film should be judged on its own category. But when it comes down to it, I give The Road to El Dorado a 7.8 out of 10. It's very close to the seal of approval. But had they fixed a few things, I guarantee you I would have given it an 8. I guarantee you would have gotten a seal of approval, and I think it would have definitely found its way into the library of one that I would watch over and over again, along with Prince of Egypt. Sadly, because of how rushed it was, 7.8. But for what this film is, it is not bad. But I am really excited to see where DreamWorks goes next with their movies after this, because next up we got Chicken Run. That'll be seen in the summer, so I'll be on the lookout for that. But yeah, that is my review for Road to El Dorado. And next time I will be doing a review on Romeo Must Die. I'm still working on the Scream 3 review. I am starting up the write-up of this, Turok 2, so be on the lookout for that, as I did upload the parts, so that'll be coming. I also have a review coming of Metal Gear Solid. I am going to work on a few Let's Play parts for my other videos, so be on the lookout for those. With that said, I will see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of The Road to El Dorado. Did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys have fun with it? Is this your favorite DreamWorks movie? Let me know in the comments below. And be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.